Cosmic here, welcome back to the channel, and today we have another Union Arena gameplay video, this time featuring two green decks. A lot of the focus right now is on Kurapika, which is more of a late game style deck, while the Toshiro and Gon and Friends are both more of your green aggressive beatdown strategies. Toshiro with wanting to lock down the board when the 13 court guard all come together, and Gon just being the one that powers up his friends to make sure he can swing through for some pretty big threatening 4Ks or even 5Ks to get over the said Kurapika wall. But that said, as the opening turns are happening here, as we're setting up our energy, let me know how your locals have been going, what's been winning, how's the turnout been. Would love to hear more about other opportunities and people are getting to play Union Arena. So here, now that we play the Sanjin, something to keep in mind, and this is just going to be a typical play mistake on my part because I don't play with as many cards that have step normally, is that there is no reason for me not to play the Sanjin to the front line here, knowing that it is most likely Tmac is going to promote, and that would have given us a blocker, which then would be able to go back to the energy line thanks to the step mechanic, which allows you to move it from the front line to the energy line. Here, Tmac is using a Hunter's License or a Final Trigger to get a couple extra things on the board, really extending out his play. And one thing I've learned with Final Triggers overall is it can be nice to set them up early, but if the game is pretty even, I almost like using them as more of a catch-up than kind of a get farther ahead, depending on how my hand is lining up. So definitely something to consider for future matches is how you're using those Final Triggers. So we have the Zep pile here, which is able to get in some damage, and we also have the Kurapika, which is just giving him a 4K blocker in the front, or 3K right now because he's not producing enough energy, but on the following turn it will be a 4K. And you know, this was actually a very strong start for Tmac with being able to get that early blocker, because in our back line we didn't have anything other than the Sanjin, so he's able to save himself a point of damage with, you know, sacrificing the Zep hole here that he's going to get to block with. However, we do hit our Toshiro off the bat here, and something to keep in mind is it does need to have 6 others. So here, unfortunately, we only have 6 court guards. So I decided to go with a more aggressive line here, tapping down the Zep pile to try to get him to block, with the Kurapika only being a 3K since I have 2 targets that could KO it. However, unlucky for us, he does hit the Gone Out of Raid, which is going to get the effect and block off our other attack here. So one thing I do want to mention more, and probably we'll do a separate video on, is the entire conversation around defensive raids and how important that is for, you know, what is a tier 1 deck versus a tier 2 deck. And that Gone coming out of life is a very good example of that, similar to Kurapika coming out of life and locking something down, or Ichigo coming out of life and being able to remove something while also giving you a blocker. Also why Blue Bomber is pretty good, which just won our locals. So some more setup turns, he's getting the new 2 Kurapika, and again, this was a card that wasn't in the Japan meta because it was part of a special event, but it is something that all the Hunter x Hunter cards have been really good actually in the respective decks if I've been testing. I still have to test the blue Gon, but the Kurapika here and the Kurapika that's in the purple deck have been real MVPs. So like, you know, trigger for trigger, as we like to say here, but we did get an active trigger, which helps us stop a little bit of the aggression back. So here we see just another Toshiro that's going to come down online. Now this one is going to freeze his back line, which is very important because he does have 2 Kurapikas in the energy line. So depending on how he blocks here, he could then threaten promoting both of those Kurapikas, getting 2 more energy producing cards online, or double energy producers, to then make both of those Kurapikas 4K attackers, which would be very strong into our board. So this is really a key turn that showcases just how strong a well-timed Toshiro can be in swinging the overall tempo of the game. Also, hitting 2 of them was nice to be said, but we just have a bunch of 4K attackers that are going through. So Tmac taking the more active line here of trying to make sure that his board stays, since he knows he can't promote anything, so he's forced to take the extra damage. And here we're having a little bit of a conversation because right before recording this match, we were actually playing against Yellow Bleach into this Gon and Friends deck. And the Gon and Friends deck has a lot of active triggers just by what cards are included in the deck, which is pretty good for it. However, Toshiro specifically states that it's until the end of their next combat, so it will remain rested in this regard. Same with his energy line. So again, Toshiro being a little bit better. Yes, it does have a much higher requirement than what we see out of the Yellow Bleach deck with things like Asnot that just taps something down, but Toshiro is able to just, again, lock down the board, take care of that impact for us in case we want to chump block, and just push through for some damage. Now again, The one downside I really have to mention with the green Bleach deck, it is very weak to dedicated removal like purple Bleach because you have to spend so many turns and resources just to make sure you're hitting 7 13 court cards on your board to get the premier effect. So here we see a Lullaby, just kind of swapping out some cards here. Small play mistake on Tmac's side, and we catch it sometimes in this match and not other times, but remember you're playing over a card. Remember that it has to go to your removal area or your outside area, exile area, and it does not count for something that you could normally get back with purple, right? So it really only matters in the purple decks about cards going from trash to removal. Normally there is technically a green Lullaby that allows you to get something back from the graveyard, but it's not played. But again, technically it does matter in some cases, but not in this list in particular. So we do hit the special trigger, trying to get some extra draws in, and again, just trying to find a pocket of damage. So we're just threatening a bunch of 4K attackers here. However, he does hit yet another active trigger, which is going to make things a little difficult for us to connect. So again, on Tmac's side, getting a lot of beneficial triggers, I will say here. Obviously not as good as, say, a special because he is running against the board and we have just enough 4K attackers with a 35 on the end because it's able to buff itself. And there he does hit the special trigger, but it's a little bit later than he might have liked. He was trying to set up a board where he could crack back for a lot of damage. And in this case, the special is going to free up a slot. However, he has gone down to 1 life. Now, the green Bleach deck by itself doesn't have impact in a lot of the lists that you'll be finding. However, there is a card that generates or gives impact to one of your 13 court cards, which wasn't in a lot of the other lists, but is something that I very strongly recommend adding as a 2 of, or maybe a 3 of if you're not playing Unohana, as our list shows at the end. But it has been really important for green Bleach to have another way to close out the game. So Zinpachi and also the one that can grant impact, I think our cards are definitely worth playing. So here we see a couple promotes by Tmac. He is going to find another raid target. This is going to be the gun that has impact, while also buffing itself, meaning the other Kurapika is going to have impact as well, and it's a 4K. And this is where you can really see the strength of that new Kurapika come online, and definitely something that, again, admittedly, I think I rated overall the Hunter x Hunter decks a little bit too low, because when I was testing them, we didn't have any of these tournament cards that are now, in the decks, and they do quite a bit. So I'm actually really excited to test specified slot again and see how much that's improved things. So we get a draw trigger, we get an active trigger, which is nice because it does help us, stop that other impact. However, we still just need to take an extra point of damage. And then, being at 1 life is already tough enough. If we find another Toshiro, if we find the impact enabler, right? But we do actually just hit the special here anyways, and we are going to be able to find a sequencing that does work in our favor and clear a few more things. So we do in fact have another special. So at this point, the game was already locked up. I could have just swung out, and here's where I was just trying to rush through the plays to just show what else the deck can do and what else the deck can find. So I do cheat 1 action point here. I do apologize for that. But I know Tmac, as he was talking about this, he's like, well, I'm just going to scoop it. And it's like, well, let me go through the motions. Let me show what it does, how Unohana can find the guy that grants impact, give it to Toshiro, right? So that if I didn't have that other special, this is another way that I could have guaranteed lethal for the turn because of the impact, even if it was a final trigger. So this is more of a, again, just rushing through. The last card here I played doesn't matter, doesn't change anything for the game state itself, other than I technically cheated. So again, keep in mind that these are more, casual games that we're playing where you try to play them fast for the sake of getting some extra content out there. So I do apologize for that, but there you can really see the strength of the green Toshiro deck coming together. And again, a lot of the matchup was pretty back and forth with the triggers themselves. So again, here we are with just getting some setup turns out of the way. Izuru is definitely a card that you want to play more of in the green Bleach deck. If you're playing the other version, which you go up to the 7 energy, just getting the double energy enablers are really important for those high costed cards. So having a 2500 body that you can promote in case you draw double of them, like I have, can be really important. And here again, a very nice play, a nice heads up play by Tmac, getting that Kurapika to the front, showing that, hey, we have some stuff that we could promote. We could get in a couple points of damage here, but respecting us being able to push forward. So he puts the Kurapika 3K to the front line, saving himself a point of damage. Otherwise, yeah, I would have had a very good reason to push up the double energy, but because our hand is not exactly lining up how we wanted to, we just want to get another, body to the back that doesn't get removed in case he has some type of removal like the Toshiro, and we just want to go right into the raid if we have it. So here's where I was kind of deciding, okay, do we go into the raid because then we get the 1 point of damage in with this guy? Do I just sacrifice the 1k to save a life later on? I think there was like setting up for another turn, and that's exactly what I go for here. Instead, I just play the other one to the front. So unfortunately, we can't really stop the Kurapika in a good way because we don't have the 3500 yet in case he doesn't go to the 6k energy requirement, right? Our Toshiro gains 500 if we have enough 13 court guards. And if he's not producing 6 energy, but you can see here he has a 6 energy here anyways, so puts us in an odd spot of not being able to have a really good blocker here, and now he has a Kurapika, which gives it haste. So this second game that we have really showcases the power of Gone and Friends when it comes together, and yes, we do have the, the free block here for the 15, but he's able to give that Killua plus 1000 power, which means it's able to restand itself, and then the Kurapika can swing through for some damage as well. So I really like the Gone and Friends deck that can just surprise your opponent with some damage and really make sure that they're chipping away early on. So here we do get the Zenpachi combo, as I like to call it, and I covered it in my other video that yes, we have enough characters, so we do get to remove something. We're also able to restand it thanks to the 1 energy card that then lets it turn into an attacker. So now it's a very big swing turn. Yes, it does take our entire turn to set this up, but now we've quickly gone, okay, well now we can be a little bit more aggressive and try to get through some damage. Now, unfortunately, he hits an active trigger, so he doesn't have to lose one of his other characters here based on blocking sequence, but it does allow us to still swing out because we have 4 characters in general, and he is going to have to take another point of damage. And then the 1k there at the end, not really doing anything. So it was a point of damage either way, but just not swinging with it because we don't need to. Also, something I need to mention in case people don't know, yes, there is alt arts between the starter deck and the main set cards. So I apologize, I just grabbed the ones that I had offhand for the sake of the video. But again, here hitting the big Gone, being able to buff everything up, and again showcasing where a Toshiro to lock something down would have been really helpful the turn before just to give us a little bit more time, but he is able to buff his entire board because he's buffed. Killua rather is going to be able to do his energy down or BP down something while restanding itself, turning off one of our blockers, and he has this fishing rod which is active with Gone on the board to remove something else, and this is just a massive threat potential by Tmac on this turn and what the deck is able to pump out. And again, all things considered, he still has an impact body on the board that we have to care about, and the Killua can always threaten our 4k bodies as well, so that is something to consider. And again, just taking a bunch of damage here because unfortunately not really much we can do against it. And also, as I mentioned in the round 1, is that our deck itself, the 13 court guard, is very weak to any type of removal or any type of loss of tempo, more so than probably any other deck in the format. So Green Bleach is definitely one of those things where, like, if it's running hot, you're running hot. The Toshiros are going to win you the game, like they did in our first video. And then sometimes you're just like, okay, well, we hit a Unohana, we can get to play some stuff for free. We do find a Toshiro here, which is really helpful. And this is kind of one of the other strong points of the deck, right? Is that, hey, now I can play a Toshiro for free. I got another card on board, and it allows us to dig deeper into our deck to find those pieces. Small misplay by me probably here is that I should have just raided over one of the other Toshiros to keep the full count on board just to get the lock, but I decided because I was going to go into this second Toshiro anyways, and we mostly care about locking down his front board to get through points of damage, save us from the impact. We just went ahead, did the 3500 or 3k now attacker into double Toshiro and Unohana, which are all 4k, and try to get some damage back that way. Now, unfortunately for us, he does hit the Gone raid here, and it is going to be able to buff his board in a meaningful way because it's also when played. And again, this is the point of defensive raids are so important in this game, and setting up your board so you can take value off of defensive raids is so important. And then he also hits the active trigger here, which, as we saw in game 1, technically doesn't matter because Toshiro's effect is not the same as Yellow Bleach's effect, so do keep that in mind. Be very careful of the wording on your cards. And here is where I made a little note, is that technically his energy line should restand because we gave up the 7th 13 court guard, so we don't get the full effect off of Toshiro. But ultimately his backline doesn't matter too much here. Like, he could maybe have promoted the Leorio to get rid of the other one if he really wanted to get one more attacker in, but without some type of buff or the other Gone Raid, he's not going to be able to swing with it in a meaningful way against our board of 4K. So that is kind of the other downside here, is that you need to line up your plays where you're always being able to buff something or get value. Again, both Gons will do it, the Mitos will do it in the back line. There's a lot of ways that you can get those buffs, but if you do skip a turn, it can feel pretty bad. However, here he does still have the Killua combo, which is able to shrink our board and basically turn off one of our blockers because we needed all of our 4Ks on board, and he's able to just push through some damage and make things even bigger. That Killua now has plus 2K, which is insane on that body. So even if he only has 2 attackers here, you know, we're already at 2 life. We're feeling pretty stressed. We're trying to figure out in what meaningful way can we block, because again, unfortunately, the way the 13 Court Guard deck works is that once you fall behind, so if we lose a character and we're unable to hit that 6 or more criteria, it can feel really bad for us, which is why we just accept that we have to take one and then start to jump out of there, but we do end up having to block with the unit. So unfortunately, not a lot we can really do to come back from this position now. We've already used up 2 of our Toshiro raids. The Gone Impact is going to be coming through. Lucky for us, we do find a third, and we do find, you know, the 7 targets in total, so we do actually get to rest down his entire board. But again, it just comes down to him finding any impact, which is, you know, 8 of the raids at this point. So the odds are very much not in our favor to survive, but this is probably about the best we could have hoped for, all things considered. And he does hit yet another active trigger here, which means, you know, we're still going to swing out. He still has to lose something or take a life. And he hits yet another Gone Raid here as well. So lots of impact opportunities for him to come across. And sorry, I meant the Kurapika, not the other Gone. The other Gone is just a buffer. The starter deck Gone is the impact one. Or again, hitting a special trigger as well. So, I mean, there are a lot of various options that Tmac could to get here to get him out of the spot. But, you know, otherwise, pretty close game, all things considered. If we would have went first and we would have got the first attack, I think it would have been a little bit different. But I think this is a good showcase of where defensive raids are important, and getting the couple early attacks in can be absolutely huge, or protecting your life like Tmac did in this matchup. So definitely let us know what types of matchups you want to see next. I think this is a good showcase for both of the decks, but otherwise, until next time, my friends, stay safe, stay hydrated, and we'll see you in the next video.